Picture this, you are running. The air is a furnace, the sun a merciless hammer in a sky the color of scorched brass. Thorns shred the fine silk of your gown, a garment that cost more than most men earn in a year, now reduced to tattered ribbons clinging to your exhausted frame. Each breath is a gasp of fire, each step a prayer that your legs won't betray you. Behind you, there is the memory of a gilded cage, of cold hands and colder promises. Ahead, there is only a vast, unforgiving wilderness. You stumble, your ankle twisting with a sharp, sickening crack. The world tilts, the horizon blurring into a smear of orange and purple as you fall to the parched earth. As darkness begins to claim the edges of your vision, a shadow falls over you. You look up to see the silhouette of a man on a horse, a figure as stark and weathered as the landscape itself. Is he a savior or just another devil in this godforsaken desert? You don't have the strength to know or even to care. Your world fades to black. Her first sensation upon waking was the scent of pine and wood smoke, a stark contrast to the cloying perfumes of her former life. Arabella Sterling blinked, her eyes struggling to adjust to the dim, amber light of a rustic cabin. A coarse but clean blanket was drawn up to her chin. Her ankle was expertly bound, the throbbing pain reduced to a dull, manageable ache. She pushed herself up on her elbows, her gaze sweeping the small, one-room dwelling. It was a space of profound simplicity. A stone hearth, a rough-hewn table, a single chair. Everything was old, worn, but meticulously cared for. This was the home of a person who owned little but valued what he had. And then she saw him. He was standing by the open doorway, staring out at the sprawling plains, his back to her. He was tall and lean, his shoulders broad beneath a faded cotton shirt. A jagged scar ran from his left ear to the corner of his mouth, a permanent white line against his sun-darkened skin that gave his profile a look of immense sorrow and unbending strength. He seemed to sense her gaze, turning slowly. His eyes, the color of a stormy sea, held no pity, only a quiet, assessing gravity. "You're awake," he said. His voice was a low rumble, like distant thunder. He moved not with the swagger of a gunslinger, but with the quiet economy of a man who conserves his energy for what truly matters. He ladled water from a bucket into a tin cup and brought it to her. His hands were calloused and scarred, the hands of a man who worked from sunup to sundown, yet his touch as he offered her the cup was surprisingly gentle. "Drink," he commanded softly. Arabella drank, the cool water a balm to her parched throat. "Who are you?" she whispered, her voice hoarse. "Silas," he replied, and offered no more. He didn't ask for her name, nor did he ask why a woman in a ruined ball gown was lying half dead in the middle of his territory. It was as if he understood that questions were a luxury she couldn't afford. In the days that followed, a silent rhythm developed between them. Silas was a man of few words, his life a testament to solitude and survival. He would leave before dawn to tend his few head of cattle, returning at dusk smelling of dust and leather. He never intruded on her, never made her feel like a prisoner. He simply provided. He would leave food on the table, a bowl of stew, a piece of hardtack bread, and fresh water by her bedside. Arabella, accustomed to a life of orchestrated ease, found herself adrift in the silence. The emptiness of her days was a mirror, forcing her to confront the emptiness of her soul. She thought of her father, a man who saw her as a beautiful asset to be traded for a lucrative partnership with Mayor Bartholomew Thompson. She remembered Thompson's smile, a predator's gleam that never reached his cold, calculating eyes. He had courted her with jewels and sonnets, but one night, she had overheard him speaking with her father, his voice dripping with contempt as he described how he would break her spirit, how she was nothing more than a pretty possession to adorn his political dynasty. That was the night she ran. She had traded a prison of gold for a prison of fear, and now, somehow, she had washed up in this strange sanctuary. Slowly, tentatively, she began to heal not just her body, but her spirit. She started by mending her dress with a needle and thread Silas had left on the table. The stitches were clumsy, a far cry from the work of her Parisian seamstresses, but they were hers. She hobbled out into the small patch of land behind the cabin, pulling weeds from the struggling vegetable garden. She learned the language of the land not through books, but through the feeling of soil under her fingernails and the burn of the sun on her neck. One evening, as Silas sat cleaning his rifle, his movements methodical and precise, Arabella found her voice. "Why did you help me?" He didn't look up from his work, his hands never ceasing their rhythmic polishing of the steel barrel. "Because you needed it," he said simply. It was not the answer of a hero. It was the answer of a man for whom decency was not a choice, but a fundamental law, as undeniable as gravity. "You ask no questions," she observed, her voice barely a whisper. "Some questions carry a weight a person shouldn't be asked to bear," he replied, and for the first time, his stormy eyes met hers across the small room. In their depths, she saw a flicker of a pain so profound it stole her breath. She realized then that his solitude was not a preference. It was a penance. The next day, she saw him standing by a lone, weathered cross on a small hill overlooking the cabin. He didn't kneel or pray. He just stood there, a silent sentinel guarding a memory. She knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that he had failed to save someone before, and that the scar on his face was nothing compared to the one on his soul. Their quiet life was a fragile bubble, and they both knew it was destined to burst. The outside world could not be kept at bay forever. It arrived one blistering afternoon in a cloud of dust and the thunder of hooves. Arabella was outside, hanging laundry on a line, when she saw them, 3 riders cresting the distant ridge. Her heart seized in her chest. She recognized the portly, imperious figure in the lead.
Mayor Thompson.
Fear, cold and sharp, lanced through her. She turned to run, but her ankle, though healed, was not strong enough. Silas appeared from the cabin, his face a mask of grim resolve. In his hands he held the rifle he was always cleaning, holding it not as a threat, but as a statement. "Get inside," he said, his voice low and urgent. He didn't need to say more. Thompson and his 2 hired thugs reined in their horses a dozen yards from the cabin, their arrogance a palpable force. The mayor's eyes, small and cruel, raked over Arabella with a possessive sneer before settling on Silas. Well, what do we have here?" Thompson boomed, dismounting with a grunt. A stray lamb and her mangy sheepdog. He adjusted his waistcoat. A grotesque parody of civilization in the raw wilderness. "I am Mayor Bartholomew Thompson. I am here for my property." Silas didn't move a muscle. He was rooted to the earth, a part of the landscape, as unyielding as the ancient rock formations behind him. "She is not property," Silas stated, his voice quiet but carrying with absolute authority. Thompson laughed, a short, ugly bark. "Son, I have a signed contract with her father. I have the law on my side. She is my betrothed, and she will be my wife. Now step aside before you get hurt." He took a step forward, his hand reaching for Arabella. In a movement so swift it was almost a blur, Silas raised the rifle, the barrel now aimed squarely at the mayor's chest. The click of the hammer being cocked was the loudest sound in the world. Thompson's thugs instinctively reached for their sidearms. "I wouldn't," Silas warned, his gaze never leaving Thompson, yet somehow encompassing the other 2 men as well. "This land has a law of its own. And here, I am the law." A tense silence descended, thick and suffocating. The wind whispered through the dry grass, a mournful sound. Thompson's face, which had been flushed with arrogance, was now pale with a mixture of rage and fear. He was a man accustomed to power derived from paper and position. He was utterly lost when faced with the power of a single, determined man defending his home. "You are making a grave mistake," Thompson hissed, his voice trembling. "The only mistake," Silas countered, his voice like flint, "was yours. You thought you could own a person's soul. You were wrong." From inside the cabin, Arabella watched, her terror warring with a new, burgeoning emotion. Awe. She was not watching a destitute cowpoke. She was watching a king defending his realm, a kingdom of honor and integrity that no amount of money could ever buy. Just as the tension reached its breaking point, Another sound drifted on the wind, the jingle of harnesses and the rumble of a wagon. Over the ridge came two more figures, a grizzled old rancher named Jebediah and his son, men Silas had shared water with during the dry season. They held hunting rifles, their expressions grim. They had seen Thompson's party ride in and had come to stand with their neighbor. Thompson's face fell. His power was built on isolating his victims, on the belief that no one would dare stand against him. Seeing the quiet solidarity of these simple men, his authority crumbled into dust. He looked from Silas's unwavering rifle to the two new arrivals, and he knew he was defeated. With a snarl of pure hatred, he turned, heaved himself back onto his horse, and rode away, his hired guns trailing behind him like beaten dogs. The dust settled. The threat was gone. A profound silence fell over the small cabin, broken only by the sound of Arabella's quiet sob of relief. Silas lowered his rifle, the tension draining from his shoulders. He turned and looked at her, and for the first time, the storm in his eyes seemed to calm, revealing a quiet harbor of profound emotion. He had not just defended her. He had redeemed himself. He had finally held the line. She walked toward him, no longer the frightened girl who had collapsed in the desert, but a woman who had found her strength in the heart of the wilderness. She stopped before him and placed her hand on his chest, feeling the steady, strong beat of his heart. "Thank you," she whispered. It was all she could say, but it was enough. He simply nodded, his hand covering hers. In that simple touch, a new contract was signed, one not of ownership but of partnership. A new family was forged, not of blood, but of courage and shared circumstance, with Jebediah and his son looking on with quiet smiles. The gilded cage was a distant memory, its gold turning to dross in the brilliant light of her newfound freedom. She had lost everything money could buy, only to gain the one thing it never could, a home. What is it that defines true wealth? Is it the shimmer of silk and the glitter of diamonds? Or is it the quiet strength of a person who will stand for you when the world tries to tear you down? Arabella had a fortune, but she was impoverished in spirit. Silas had nothing but a humble cabin and a painful past, yet he was the richest man she had ever known. We often chase after the things we are told to value: status, power, possessions. But how often do we stop to ask what our soul truly needs? When faced with the ultimate choice, would you choose a life of comfortable emptiness or one of risky, beautiful, and authentic connection? If this story of courage and redemption resonated with you, let us know in the comments below. What do you believe is the greatest treasure a person can find in this life? Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories that challenge the heart and inspire the soul.